Okay, so let's start with the 5.1. The biggest new feature of the 5.1 was actually the parameter support. You can use the parameter to parameterize your SQL queries or parameterize your data wrangling processes pipeline. And so that like your, for example, like the chart or maybe like dashboard or note can be more interactive when you share with other folks, and other folks can change the parameter values from the web browser and then query the data that they are interested in. So that's a parameter. And then we always introduce new features or enhancements in this area along with analytics and chart and data wrangling. I'm going to go more kind of detail later on. And then also we added a new data sources. Just a second. Okay. So I'm going to mute them all again. Okay, here it goes. Sorry about that. I think some noise was coming in, so I have muted all of them. Okay, cool. Let's get back. Okay. So let's take a look one by one. And the parameters, I'm going to have a chance to, I believe, yeah, we should be able to do some demo around this, but just to highlight. So this is a dashboard UI, but then like once you set up the parameters, the parameter pane will show up at the right-hand side. And then like that's where like you can select the values from the list of values or drop down, or like you can have like a slider to change the numerical values, or you can have like a free input field, or like you can have like a calendar to set the date related parameter values and so on. But regardless, like once you set it, then like the data display or showed in the charts will be automatically updated based on the conditions. And then also you can parameterize your SQL query if you're using a SQL query that accessing the databases such as Redshift or Google BigQuery or MySQL or whatever. And then in that case, when the users of the dashboard are not change the parameter values, then that will be translated as a new query to going to the database and query that data. And also, not only for the dashboard or not, you can actually use the parameter inside the exploratory. So like sometimes like you might want to change some of the parameter values to see like how the data will change. So that case, you can use that as well. So those are parameters. I'm going to do the demo after introducing other new features. In the visualization area, we added a violin plot chart and a density chart and a scatter matrix and a word cloud. And also like we enhanced a heat map and a pivot table. So first, violin plot. Violin plot is very similar to the Boxplot, but like it's almost like a combining with a density plot, which I'm gonna talk about that right after this. So not only the Boxplot gives you sort of very brief summary idea of the distribution, but the violin plot will give you how it's more like a kind of granular information of the data distribution. Okay. And then the density plot is similar to histogram. So this density plot chart, basically like we have like monthly income, so numeric variable or column of the x-axis. And then like we try to understand like the distribution of the monthly income. So, and usually we typically like we use histogram, but in this case, using a density plot. Density plot helps you understand the distribution of the data, but also being able to compare among the categories. So in this case, we are basically comparing the distribution of the job roles. So what type of the job roles are there in regards to the monthly income. So for example, like a red color at the most right-hand side, there's a mountain there. So this is a manager as a job role. So like manager will, the monthly income range is much higher than the other type of the jobs. So that's the density plot. And then the word cloud chart, this is one way to visualize sort of like a text data, gives you, so for example, like when you have like a higher value, in this case, like I created visualization based on the tweets of Elon Musk. And then like, whatever what basically, if we want to understand what type of thing he's saying or what type of the words he's using, then, this visualization can be used. So like bigger the text you see, that means that that text has been used more often than the others, and so on. And then the heat map has been there for a long time, but the repeat by was not there. So like we supported it repeat by from the 5.1. So not only like heat map chart is useful like when you want to compare category by category. So in this case, this is I'm looking at like the recent RFM, like recency, frequency, monetary, doing the analysis, and then you can sort of like between these two categories, let's say like recency and monetary categories, and then I want to see like where most customers are. And then like I'm using a repeat by, so therefore like I'm using these metrics by the market. For example, Asia Pacific, very old and very high. That's where the most customers are. And scatter matrices, or basically the matrix of the scatter plot. But typical scatter plot, usually like you have, let's say like a sales and then sales comp or sales and marketing. And then like how we want to understand the relationship between those two variables. But scatter matrix basically is like you said, like, hey, you know what, like I have like these 5 numerical variables and I want to see the relationship between each, every single combination. And then that's where like you can use it. But first we introduced this under the analytics view. There's something called correlation by columns. And that's where like you can select those columns, and then it used to be under the correlation to use, you have the heat map kind of view. But now like there is a scatter matrix tab, and if you go there, like you can see the chart like this. It's basically a bunch of scatter plot. And then we are planning to bring this under the chart or chart view as well. So yeah, so stay tuned for that. And the pivot table enhancements. So pivot table, it turned out like there are a lot of people like using pivot table. So we get a lot of enhancement requests, and so we keep making it better. So this time with 5.1, we added a URL link, and also like we added categorical columns to be able to be used for the value. So sometimes like you might want to just count number of the categorical columns, or like you might want to use like a last value or the first value or something like that. So like we added that as well. And then the grand total used to be just sum total, but now like we support like average, median, and max and mean and other aggregation functions as well. And then you can also set the sort order kind of like a fixed way instead of like just only the end user can set. So that sometimes you want to fix that layout before you present. So like you can use that as well. So URL link is pretty cool. And it's sometimes like you might want to just make each value to be the link. So therefore like you can click one of them to open the website or web page. And with that, the values of the row or column to be sort of like kind of dynamic values that are part of the URL. Then like therefore like you can open a different website, or you can pass the different values as a parameter of the URL to change the output of the particular web page or something. So that's there. And then not only the pivot table, this URL link is something that you can actually set for the table under the chart view as well. And so those are the visualization or chart enhancements, the new features. But now let's move on to the analytics. So under the analytics view, we have the random forest, and we added the Boruta is one of the sort of method under the random forest. And also like we added variable importance for linear regression. And then we added a marginal effects for logistic regression. And then GLM, general, sorry, GLM has been there as a data wrangling step, but we brought this onto under analytics view as well. So the Boruta looks like something like this. I'm going to do the quick demo after this. But basically, the variable importance that like used to be there and is still there, but you can turn in the switch on to show as a Boruta. The cool thing about this Boruta is that there were two problems with a typical like variable importance with random forest. The number one is a random forest, as the name suggests, that it takes a random random sample of the data and then build a random forest model. So therefore, like typically, like if you don't set the seed, like every time like you run the variable importance, or you build a random forest model, the trees inside the random forest are slightly different, and that causes the output or like output as prediction or output as a variable importance will be slightly different. And that means for the variable importance, the ranks or important ranks that can be different. For example, in this case, we are looking at like the first variable seems to be like significantly different, but the second, third, fourth seems to be kind of like in the same range. If you see that as a variable importance of the bar chart, then the rank can be different. Let's say the plurality can be sometimes second, sometimes the fourth, sometimes third. So then like that confuses the consumers of this information. So therefore, Boruta basically runs 20 or like how many times like you can actually specify, but as a default, 20 times you run the random forest models, and then basically takes those ranking as a distribution. So therefore, like it is used in the Boxplot to show the ranking distribution of the ranking. So therefore, like you get this kind of chart view. Another problem is like when you have the variable importance, let's say like you have the 20 variables and then you run the variable importance, right? And then like you get the ranking, but then obvious question is like, so all these 20 variables are important, or maybe it's first 5 or first 10 are the important variables, regardless of the ranking. So that's the second problem with typical variable importance of the random forest. So the Boruta actually does a statistical test behind the scene, basically like by creating something called shadow variables from the existing variables. It basically shuffle or randomly like shuffle the existing values. Therefore, those variables should have nothing to do with the target variable in terms of the relation, correlation. So there shouldn't be any relationship. Right, so like you have like let's say like 10 variables as a predictors, and then like that means the Boruta will create 10 shadow variables, and then like combining all of them to build a random forest and then build a variable importance, and then that means if existing variables, if those kept scoring higher points than the shadow, so-called random variables, then those variables can be considered as useful or like more important or like something that like we can think those are really important. But if those variables are scoring as similar to the randomly created this like a shadow variables, then like we don't want to consider those that important, right? And then so the tentative and the rejected. Rejected means those are the variable, for example, in this case, a month as a variable, the most right-hand side, always scoring worse than the random variable. So like we can simply reject those as importance. The tentative sometimes is better, sometimes not. So like it comes in sort of like we can't say it's better, but at the same time we can't say it's worse. So those are the tentative. So in this case, only the green and the gray color in this particular chart. So but sometimes you see like a yellow color. So those are so basically like in practical sense, like if it's yellow, that means it's not confirmed. So therefore, like you want to still try to see like what are the relationship with the target variable, then you want to go to the chart and see that. So this Boruta is something that like, we can. This is a very high level explanation, but we're gonna have a different session to go more like a dive into like exactly like how that works and how we can use kind of stuff in a different online seminar. Okay, let's move on to the next one is a linear regression. So linear regression, I mean, like variable importance is like we always think of it sort of as a part of a random forest or like as a machine learning algorithm. But also like a linear regression, we can use, we can do variable importance. In the data science world, typically like we call relative importance. But in a nutshell, like the linear regression, basically the linear regression model has something called R square. Like R square means it's basically like how the model fits with the data, with one of the metrics. So by using this like R square, then like we can actually rank the variables. And there are different ways of like using that R square in terms of getting this kind of score. And then you can actually select that. So the easiest one is simply like when you have each variable with as a predictor, and then test that like how the model performs better or not. And then like you can actually do all sorts of combination of like to build a model and then generate R square. So that's the relative importance or like variable importance. So we call it variable importance under the linear regression analysis. So in this case, obviously, like we can see, like we have the target variable is the sales. This is like a sales data, something like a supermarket or something like that. And then like from as long as you're looking at the bar chart, like you can see like a sales comp marketing. Those are the two sort of like big ratio of R square, which is the y-axis. But by just looking at this, like you can say like sales comp, marketing, subcategory, quantity, these are the four variables that probably have more influence in terms of sales, more effects on sales, and others seems like super small. So it helps you to understand which variables like you want to look into. And another thing is a logistic regression. So logistic regression, like we sometimes do training, online training, or like even physical, in-person training. And every time, like when we explain logistic regression, one of the point that people get super confused is like odds ratio or coefficient. So it turned out like the people in the world also like even like a science world get confused by this. So therefore, the smart people in especially I think like econometrics or political science area, and they usually use this thing called marginal effect. And the marginal effect is nothing. It's very easier to interpret. When you see the value, basically, like, then it's very similar to now all of a sudden more like kind of linear regression. So in this case, on the left-hand side, like a plurality with the like a blue bar on the most left-hand side. So that means when the value in the plurality increase, 1 point increase, then whatever the given value of the marginal effect value, which can be translated as a percentage of something is going to happen or not. So in this case, it says the target variable is premature. So if this is like a US, I think this is like a baby data. So like if the baby is going to born prematurely or not. So that's the question here, or that's the target variable. So if the plurality number 1 point increase, then this is probably like about like 0.07, so like 7% chance that the baby is going to be born prematurely. So it's much easier to interpret rather than like odds ratio. Odds ratio is not that odds is a true and false ratio, but odds ratio is like the increased ratio of like odds of the each value of the increase of the predictor. Obviously, like I'm not really explaining well, but so anyway, so that this marginal effect is there, or precisely the average marginal effect. This again is not probably enough to explain just like 30 seconds. So like we're gonna have more detailed session around the logistic regression with this marginal effect sometimes later as well. And there are additional families of GLM being added under the analytics view. And also, we are adding the negative binomial as well. That's going to come in 5.3, which is due in next month as well. And the data wrangling side of things. So there are a bunch of things, but these are the most probably relatable for many folks. So number one, the data source switch. I think I'm going to just go one by one. Sorry, let's start with the branch root switch. So like branch is very easy, very convenient. Sometimes like when you have like data imported from like files or database or whatever, and then like you might want to do a different type of analysis or different type of like data wranglings. And then in that case, instead of creating a different new data frame, instead like you keep the one data frame, then like you create bunch of multiple data frames underneath. So it's kind of like think of it like the parent data frame and the child data frame. All the children data frame belong to parent data frame, right? So when you create a branch data frame, then later sometimes you realize you edited something in the parent data frame, and in that case, you might want to switch where the branch was split off. So like that is called like a branch root. So you might want to change the branch root to like step 2, or maybe like later on like step 6 or something. So you can actually do that by drag and drop now. And the next one is the one like I was actually originally talking about, is a data source switch. So maybe sometimes like you might be doing some analysis with the Excel data, and then later like you want to switch it exactly the data pipeline or like the analysis you're doing, but you want to just switch the data source from Excel to database or MySQL database, let's say. In that case, you can just switch the data source by selecting the menu. And join UI updates. So the UI join is super powerful, and then like pretty common thing to do. And we wanted to make it easier to sort of like operate or like do this like operation. So we just added like some color hint and then so on. But also another thing is once you run the join, then at the join step, like you can see like which columns coming out, came from the target data frame versus original data frame. So we have that color, the sort of like a bar at the top of each column. Also, like we have added, there's a case insensitive join. So this often happens is that where in this case a key column like app and app, or maybe like an application name or something, and then sometimes like because the one original data frame had, let's say like a Google or something, and then by starting all the letters are like a small letter. And then a target data frame had like a Google, but the initial G can be uppercase or something like that. Then that means those two doesn't match because those cases are different. But when you, by checking this case insensitive join, then we ignore it, and then like we try to match those things. So it's actually pretty useful. We bring in this type of things to the filter as well. So in filter, like sometimes you want to say, hey, keep only, let's say like a Google, related data. And in this case, again, like data itself, the raw data itself might have like a uppercase or smaller case or mixed case or whatever. But you want to actually get all of the Google related data. So it used to be like you have to do like some kind of like a data transformation beforehand, but now like you can just check in a filter dialog to be able to do that as well. And also the filter. So this filter can be as part of the chart filter or like the step filter, data wrangling filter, like that. Like you create the filter from the column header menu of the summary or table view, either way. But you can select the summarize function as a checkbox. Then you can select the summarize function like a mean or median or something like that. And then you can use that to filter the data. So what this means, for example, the question like, hey, like I want to see only the data that is greater than the average sales or average counts or like average delay time or something like that. Then you, in that case, you can use this summarize function. Instead of like a typical filter is like, hey, I want to see the sales greater than 200 or 300 or something like that, right? But instead, like you can actually do like a greater than the average of this particular group or something like that. Okay, then the data source. So we have added Amazon Athena support. So Athena is when you have like a S3, using S3 and then dumping all the data, and then you can use SQL query to access to those data or like the files in the S3 repository by just writing a SQL query. So now you can use that. You can do that in Exploratory as well. And we added the Teradata support and also like a OAuth switch. OAuth is you wanna you use to access the Google Sheet, Google BigQuery, Twitter, and so on. And sometimes you have multiple accounts. Therefore, like now, like you can switch between to access to different entity of the data. So here is Amazon Athena UI. So like writing SQL query to access access files in S3. And then again, here as well, like you can use the parameters just by typing @ and then curly bracket. And then like you can specify that. And then this means like the chart you created on top of this data, users of that chart or dashboard can change those parameter value from the UI and then manipulate or the part of the SQL query to get a different set of the data. And other enhancements as well. Number one is Windows installer, and second, custom repository location. So now, like you can choose where you want to store all of your projects at the installation time, or maybe even like later on from the configuration UI, and then so you can switch that as well. Some of our users are using Dropbox, so keeping exported repository under the folder of the Dropbox or that type of the file syncing service. To then therefore you can use multiple machine or PC, and then each machine like you install Exploratory, and then let the Dropbox or that type of the service to sync the Exploratory repository. So therefore, like you can work on the same project from multiple machines at the same time. And another thing is like our package install. So like in Exploratory, you can install our packages from CRAN or CRAN, C-R-A-N. That's the our package repository. So you can install that, but now like you can install inside the project. It used to be like you had to get out of the project and project this page and then like install and come back in the project. But now like you can just do that within a project. A Windows installer, so finally, like used to be just a zip file, and we had some problem with some of the users who can't install because it was some kind of like expanded zip on there's a different things on the Windows. But anyway, long story short, so now we have the installer. So that one of the advantages of having an installer is now like you can access to it, you can launch Exploratory from the start menu instead of like clicking on the .exe file on that file system. So there's that. And then the R package installation. So inside the project, go to that project name. There's the icon at the right hand side of the project name. And then there's a menu, and in there, like you can find and manage R packages. And then you can see the list of the R packages installed, and also you can check the package name to be able to use it inside the project. And also you can click on the install new packages tab, and then type the package name, and then install it, and then start using it right away. Okay. So, and then, so those are like 5.1, and I'm going to just keep going with 5.1, so 5.2, then I can do the quick demo. So 5.2, we added a chart highlight, and then also we added a comment for chart analytics. So those are the two things I think it's very important. And also, like, we have improved the performance. So I think 5.1 was horrible in terms of performance around the chart, and also other places. Like, let's say, like, when you want to do the data wrangling, adding the new step or something like that. So we have looked into it, and then we did a lot of things around this. So with the new release 5.2, the performance should be much better than before. So I'd like you guys to try it. And the chart highlight is it's pretty powerful, especially like when you want to show that to other folks. But basically, like, you can pick and choose, which value to highlight, and this can be used, but in basically most of the charts, line chart, bar chart, box plot, whatever. And then, so it's pretty simple. I'm going to do the quick demo after this. And then the comment feature for chart and analytics. So when you do that, especially like when you're working on like exploratory data analysis type of things, so you ended up creating a bunch of charts. And then when you look back later, and then like you have no idea like what each chart is, I mean, like, so you have to start thinking again. But instead, like, wouldn't that be great? Like, you can leave the comments while you're working on it. Then like later on, like when you look back, this helps you to see like what you thought was interesting about this particular visualization. So you can leave the comments. And then the cool thing about this comment is you can use Markdown. So you can make the format for this text. And another thing is you can preview it when you do the mouse over on each chart tab. So sometimes like you're looking for like a particular chart, and then like you want to see like a similar chart thumbnail, but maybe like a comment you can make a difference. You can pick and choose by relying on this type of comments or annotation. And when you want to present this later on in a note or slide, and then you can select this chart, and then that will also copy this comment. So therefore, what I usually recently I have been doing is like I leave these comments for the charts that like I think it's interesting, useful. So like I just said, like I create a bunch of charts and 5 of them, and I leave the comments. And I create a note, and I just select those charts, dump them together, and then pretty much like my note is almost ready. And I just make some kind of like editing, then like publish. That's it. So it really helps me sort of like keeping those insights that like I'm finding while I'm exploring the data, and also like putting together the report with those comments, and then get that work done. So that's that. And then like a Boxplot and a bubble chart. Now you can do the sorting based on the values and based on the aggregated values. So that's pretty cool. In Japan, I'm not sure like in other countries, but in Japan, like this thing called treasure data is pretty popular. So like we added a support in the 5.2 as well. Okay. So let's do a quick demo. So first, I like to do quickly go over the parameter. So let's say like we have this is like a flight delay data, and then so a bunch of the airlines in the U.S. and then I can show like how much is delay or not, that kind of stuff. But here, like I'm showing the each these are like airline companies kind of like a code. AA means American airline, for example. DL means a Delta airline, or so on. And then there's like a number of rows. So like this data is each row is each flight. So from like Boston to JFK, New York, and so on. So like basically here is we can see like a number of the flights of particular day by each airline carrier, right? So now like there are like I think 12 airline carriers. So I want to filter this, but I want to actually use the parameter to filter this data. So like what I can do is let's say like I want to create for the carrier and then create the filter, and then it's in like equal to, but then I can set only single value, but I want to set like multiple values. So like I'm going to select the is in, and then select this parameter checkbox, And this will give me this menu says create a parameter. And I click on this create parameter, and then let's start creating parameters. So first, I want to do like a carrier, give a name to the parameter. And then display name, that's the name that like you're going to see in the parameter pane, or like your users will see the in the parameter pane. And the data type is the character is fine. And the input type, I want to use this list of values to be able to select, and not only just single value, I want to select the multiple values. And then here, like I can start typing those list of values, but I want to just copy and paste from like existing values, right? So I can click on this copy value from existing data frame and select the data frame. And sometimes when you have the data wrangling step right-hand side, and the data shape can be changed, the data value itself change. So you might want to select in a particular step so that like you can guarantee the values to be showing up for the particular value, particular parameter. So in this case, I don't really have much, but anyway, so I'm going to just set that to second step. And then the value is a carrier, right? And then like this automatically the values come. And then I can change the display name as a different name, but I'm going to keep that for now. And another thing I want to do is don't want to set the default values. Then like when I use this parameter, then that means I'm not selecting any particular value. And then that means I want to see all the values, right? Like American Airlines and Delta and United and all the stuff. But if I select the default, then that means that the default, when I open the chart or like whatever, I'm going to see only the data for the particular airline carrier. So I disable that default value. And then like I'm going to just click on the save button. And then inside this filter dialog, now like I can see the parameter. I have only one parameter that can be used in this context, which is like has to be character data type. So like I'm seeing the carrier. And that's okay. And then I'm going to just click run. And what happened to the chart, like I'm still seeing these 12 values. But if I click on this parameter button, and I'm not seeing any parameter showing up. The reason here is because this chart currently, the value is coming from the step 2, not from the step 3. So I'm going to move this something called ping to the step 3. Then that means this data is now coming from step 3, meaning after the filtered. So the filtered data is now showing up in the chart. But in this filter, what's going on is like using the parameter. And then that means I haven't changed the parameter. That's why like all the airline carriers are showing up. I'm going to click on this parameter pane. Now like I see this carrier name parameter showing up in the pane. Then that's where like I can start selecting, for example, like American Airline. I want to select that Delta Airline. I want to select that maybe like United Airline and so on. So like I see like 3 different values. And then like another thing it's cool is once you have this, and then like you go to, let's say like a dashboard. I already created this dashboard. Okay. And then like when I run this dashboard, I added like 2 charts. And then like automatically, I think the charts is picking up those 3 values, but I can, let's open a separate window to make it wider or bigger. And in the dashboard, I don't really have to do anything particular. It automatically picks up whatever the parameters that are needed to for each chart. So in this case, I think this chart is using the parameters. So like if I click on the parameter pane, I see those 3 values selected. So I can control this from the dashboard side as well. And the same thing, like if I, and then like if I publish this dashboard, then like my users or like the people I share with can actually control this type of thing from the web browser. So I think that's the parameter. There are a lot in the parameters, but I don't have enough time to cover it. So like probably like I should plan for like a separate session for diving into the parameters. Another thing that I like to show is a new chart that we introduced. So to do, let's go to the chart view. So first, there's something called density plot, which is basically similar to histogram. Let's start with the histogram. And let's say like I want to see like monthly income, how that is distributed, right? And then I want to compare among by the job roles, what type of the job roles. The problem here is that like the color is on top of each other. So like it's kind of hard to see. Like I can see like a red color is on this side, and then like this I don't even know how to describe this color. The kind of green brown color is on the left hand side. But that's pretty much it. So that's where like this density plot it's helpful to understand how the data distributions differ among the categories. And then so this one though it's kind of underneath. Let's say like let's focus on this like a just manager. So to understand this curve is that like it's underneath under this curve is basically like combined and it's considered, so let's say like a 1 or like 100 or whatever, and then like basically like that 100 or how like it's distributed, and also like each curve like how this one is being calculated is something called at the particular data point it assumes there's some sort of like a normal distribution, and then like you actually create like by all the data range, and they ended up like drawing this line. Anyway, so this gives you the kind of overview of how the data distributed, and then regardless of like amount of data. So let's say like you happen to have like only like 20 people for the manager, and then 1,000 people for the sales representative, but you can still see like how it's distributed clearly, because it's not about how much data was there like histogram. This is more to do with like if given number of people, like how those number of the people will be distributed along the monthly income. So it's very easy. That's why like it's easier to compare among the categories. Now here, like if let's say like I want to just highlight this particular job, it's called research director. I want to see like how the research director's monthly income distribution compared to other job roles. In the case, I go to the color, and then there is a highlight menu. Click on that, and then click on the enable highlight. And the default make everything as a light gray. But I want to actually highlight. So like click on this drop down, and this will show you the list of the values from here. And then like I want to see like research director as a red color or like whatever the color. And then I click on apply button. Then now I can see the research director. I can select the multiple value. Let's say like a laboratory technician as let's say like a blue color. And then like I can see that as well. So this is the chart highlight. And when I highlight, then like I can just I don't have to highlight, but like when I find some useful information, this is where like you can set the comment. So like this is a comment icon, click on that, and then the chart name. So like this is like a monthly income distribution, and then looks like the manager to make him more than the others. Sorry, I'm looking at here the research director. So like also managers and research director. And then like let's say like if I want to use the markdown, which means the double asterisk makes the bold. And also I can use different things. Let's say like use a pound sign to make it header 1 or header 2. I can do that as well. Then click OK, and this basically the title becomes different. And then for some reason chart summary is not coming along, but I think this here. So like, and then like when I go to the different chart, and then like when I look at trying to find the chart, and I can see not only the chart summary image, but also the comment will be showing up. So that helps me to find not only remembering the comments, but also finding the right chart I'm looking for. Okay, and then now the next thing is the violin plot. So here, like, so let's start with the box plot. It's because it's very similar. So like let's say like a job roles, And like I want to see the distribution of the monthly income. It's basically the same thing we are doing by using that density plot. Oh, by the way, so this one you can now sort by the y-axis values to from the big to the small, or vice versa. But like let's say like moving back to the box plot, and then like we can change to the violin plot, and they're very similar, except like when you look closer, there's even like a box plot inside this violin plot. But a violin plot basically showing the data distribution more like at the granular level. So let's say like, for example, this laboratory technician, even the box plot is kind of like showing the median and then like 25%, 75% quantile and the max mean value. But it seems like the lower end has more people than the higher end. So that type of more information you can actually read. But if you're not used to it, you want to start with the box plot because it's much simpler. And then like, if you care about like where exactly more people are in that particular distribution, then you might want to consider using it. So that's the box plot. And then there's a word cloud. To do the word cloud, let me just go to the tweet data. So I extracted some of the data around, I searched data science from the Twitter, and then like I get the bunch of the information, not information, it's like a tweets. So it's about 17,000 tweets. And then basically like I just tokenize the text, and then I remove the stop words. These are the things that you can actually do from the all the column header menu. And then like I filter some of the reserved words or like the common words. And then now like I have this token, right? So this one is when I go to the bar chart. These are the words. And then when I zoom in, whoa, there are too many words. And these are the words from AMP, AI, learning, Python, analytics, and so on. So this is one way to visualize, and I like a bar chart because it gives me more like it helps me to understand the sort of like a difference between these or among these. But sometimes you want to present in a nicer way, especially like the presentation kind of opportunity. So create a new chart, and then select the word cloud, and then the word, in this case, a token. And then the color by there's like a number of rows. So like how many times that particular token, a given token was used. And then now like you get this type of the view. So obviously like the AMP, learning, AI, those are the top. And then next one, the analytics and Python and so on. This color though, this color is basically using the categorical column. That means it's basically created 5 different categories based on the number of the rows, meaning number of the times that each particular term or the word is being used. You can change that to continuous color scale. So you can do that in a color palette as well. So that's the word cloud. And then the time is pushing. So like I gotta kind of a little bit hurry up, but I wanna move on to the analytics side of the new features. So let's go back to the HR, this employee data that we are looking at. And then let's go to the analytics view. And then let's say this monthly income, like we want to understand like what are the things that like have more sort of like a relationship or correlation to the monthly income. So like let's do is one of the things is typically do is like using a random forest and then do the variable importance, right? So target variable in this case, let's say like monthly income. And then a predictor, like I'm going to select all of them, except like the last years and stuff. And then click OK, and then click on the run button. So this basically builds a random forest model and giving me the variable importance. And then see here is the job level and then all that stuff. So now, like I said, so these are the basically important. So that means like, for example, fast forward are important, or maybe like even these are the scores kind of a low, but are these important? Another thing is this rank can be different like every time like you run. under the analytics view, like we set a sheet, so it's not going to change. Actually, like a randomness can be actually set kind of fixed. But even then, like that just knowing that like that this randomness will give you different variable importance view doesn't make you comfortable. So in the case, in this property, like there is a variable importance section, and then like you can set this Boruta to yes, and then click on this apply button, and this will build a random forest 20 times by default. You can change the numbers, and then give you this view. So therefore, now under the importance, each box plot. No, each bar is being replaced by the box plot, because this one, for example, job level, is like this is showing a 20 scores in distribution. The same thing for the next total working years, and then also sort of things. And then these gray ones, these are the ones that these variables never be the randomly created shadow variables. So probably like we can ignore this. And then this yellow are not decided based on the statistical test. And then like you can go to the effects by variables if you want to see like how that means a job level. Seems like a job level goes up and then monthly income goes up. This probably, because I actually know this data, this is sort of like answer, like when the monthly income goes up, job level goes up, the monthly income goes up. So like super correlated. So typically like you don't want to include this, but nonetheless, this is just for the demo and just wanted to give you the idea how this Boruta can be used. And then next one is the relative importance, like variable importance for the linear regression. So what we did in the random forest can be done by using statistical model, in this case, a linear regression. And then like, let's say like monthly income and then predictor variables. Again, like, let's try the same thing, selecting all of them. And then I see the employee ID or something like employee number. Let's remove that. That's like too granular. And then like let's run it. Again, like I'm sure job level is going to be important. But so this one, the coefficient view, sometimes people get confused because it seems like this one is the highest value. So this is more important. But it's actually not, because of the unit is different. So the job role unit and the job level unit and the age, each unit is different. So you can't really compare among the variables by just looking at the coefficient values. If you want to do something like that, and then you can actually open this property, go find the variable importance section, and then enable relative importance to be true. And there are the different methods to calculate this. I'll cover that in a different session. But then click apply. And then after this, once you do it, like there's an importance tab now. And when you go there, and then like that's where like you can see like what are the importance, sort of like a score, ranking score for each variable. Then here is like now you can say like job level is more important than the others. Then probably like job level, job role, total working years, age, these are the variables probably have more effects in terms on the monthly income. So that's pretty cool. And then you might be wondering like, when should I use machine learning or random forest, or when should I use this linear regression, which is a statistical model? So that's also like I'm planning to do online session to cover that as well. And then last not least, which is logistic regression. For that, I'm gonna use this like a churn analysis, churn data. This is like a telco churn data. So the customer churn or the cancel the service or not. To do, let's select the logistic regression. I've already created this model. So underneath the logistic regression. And then a target variable is churn, like so it's canceled or not, right? And the predictor variables, I selected most of the variables. And then when I run it, so this is where the default view, which is the y-axis, the odds ratio. And then like it makes this is kind of hard to explain to, especially like other folks who have no background in statistics. What does this mean? Or for example, this like a contract 2 years. This one is a red color. That means less likely to churn, less likely to churn. But what this exact means of like the odds ratio 0.45, right? So you can actually change this metrics. Open this property dialog, and then like under the coefficients, instead of like odds ratio, you can select average marginal effect, and then click run button. The default doesn't give you this confidence interval, but you can actually explicitly turn it on to get the confidence interval as well if you like. So like when you go here, then you want to actually make this one true. The reason that default is false for the average marginal effect is because it actually makes a long time. The performance is kind of slow, so like that's why it's false. But you know, if you want to grab a coffee or something, then turn it on if you really need it. But anyway, here, then this contract 2 years, for example, is a red color, and then that means it's a negative in terms of like the churn. So negative is a churn, meaning that not churn, right? So like if the customer is a 2-year contract, and then this is we got to be careful because this is categorical. So when you go to the summary tab, and then like you see, or maybe like go to the coefficient table. Contract type. Where's the contract type? I'm not seeing the contract type. Here, contract 2 year. To understand here, the base level is the month to month. So like compared to month to month, when the customer is a 2 years contract, then it's less likely to churn. But not only less likely, the average marginal effect is minus 0.14. That means 14% less likely to churn. So now, for example, other thing is, let's say here, senior citizen. If the customer is a senior citizen, then likely to churn, and then it's 6% likely to churn. Is there any like a numeric values here? Oh, here's the monthly charge. So this one is this is like a super, yeah. So this is like 1 point increase in monthly charge. Let's say this is like $1 increase monthly charge. The average, in average, 0.1% more likely to churn, which is kind of like a counterintuitive. But this is what the data says here. So model says here. Anyway, so marginal effect is more intuitive than the other like metrics like odds ratio or coefficient. So if you had a problem, I suggest you to try this out. Okay, so that's those 3 things. Okay, so the last part is a roadmap. So we have released 5.2, that's a few weeks ago. And then last week, we have released 5.2.1, which certified the latest release of R, which is 3.6. So that's out there. 5.2.1 is the latest release out there. And in July, next month, we are working on right now for the 5.3 to release next month. That has, a wider bunch of enhancements and new features. One of the things is the profit. We are adding the extra regressor so that you can have like other variables to affect impact on the forecasted values. And then we've been working on the causal inference area, and so you're going to see some of the features if we can make it for the July. And then like other additional statistical tests, and also in the chart area, like we are trying to support a binning, so like you can assign a numerical column to the X or Y or color. Then you can actually specify the way the bin create a category based on the numerical variables. And also like a chart top end, bottom end, like you saw in a bar chart. Sometimes when you have like 1,000 bars and you have no idea like what each bar is, so like you might want to say like, hey, give me only the top 10 or top 20, top 50 bars or something like that. So that's something that we are working on as well. And then we are improving the data wrangling area, data wrangling UI experience as well. And then September release, we're going to continue enhancing the products. And then one of the big, I think the biggest thing for that release is the time series forecasting. So in Exploratory right now, we have the Prophet is a time series algorithm, but we're going to add other forecasting algorithm as well. Like traditionally, like the ARIMA, auto ARIMA, and also like bars, and then state space, and then other area as well. And then November release, we're gonna release as more like a cloud version. So like now, like you don't have to necessarily install the desktop, but then you should be able to access from the website, web browser. And also like we're gonna add a more collaboration capabilities, meaning like you have the project and you can invite others to work on the same project together. So those are the roadmap. And I think that's it. So I know that it's already 10 minutes after 12, so like some of the folks might not be able to stay in. But I would like to open up the Q&A session, Q&A session, if you have any questions. Then I have muted you guys, so if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and then speak up. Meanwhile, I saw a question, why don't you enable LR importance by default? Yes, I think linear regression importance, yes. We might actually do in the next release. So like basically based on our testing, we care about the performance a lot. So we have some threshold in each analytics type based on the data we use. And it didn't meet the performance criteria, so therefore we turn it off. But then it turned out like many people like it, and it's the same thing for Boruta too. Like once people start using Boruta, like they always want to use the Boruta. So we might we are considering changing that default behavior as well. And then when can we expect to have the possibility to apply a predictive model to new data? Yes, actually I forgot to mention the roadmap. The next release, this July release, 5.3, the big thing is actually you can split the training data and the test data even under the analytics view. Used to be like you got to do that at the data wrangling step, but now like with the next release, you should be able to do that under the analytics view. And that means you can actually select the new data to predict and then show that predicted result under the data tab. So, and then, yeah, there's that. So we're planning for the next release. What was the S3 feature? Yeah, S3 feature is so now you can use Athena to write a SQL query to access the S3 data, but we are planning to directly access to a particular file on S3. Let's say like CSV or JSON or something like that. Do you currently allow one-hot encoding on categorical feature? Yes, you should be able to access to the one-hot encoding. So let's say like from the column header menu, there's this like one-hot encoding, and then it will give you this UI, one-hot encoding, and yes, and then this is going to create that, let's say like a bunch of columns. In this case, I think the partner is only like yes and no, so you will have the two columns. Can we also have range joins? Yes, there is a package, our package called fuzzy join. So you might wanna try that. But we are considering to support that as well in some point. But if you wanna try it, some of our users actually already using it. So install the fuzzy join R package, and then basically like you select the custom R command, and then type that particular command. I forgot the exact name. Then do such as well. If you like to confirm the package name, like just please contact me, and then I can give you the direction as well. Okay, so any other questions? Ooh, wait a second here. Any NLP specific stuff coming? And natural language processing. Yes, we are not planning anything particular in NLP, natural language processing side of things. But if you have any particular requirement, please send me or send us, and we like to consider it. we don't typically hear a lot in this particular area. So, but we like to hear more, in terms of requirements. And are you considering adding even more time series analytical support like wavelet, FFT, etc.? To be honest, I'm not sure about this like a wavelet, but please, can you send me more detailed information, or it doesn't have to be detailed, but more information by email or intercom chat message? We'd like to consider, because for the 5.4, we are going to, we're gonna be really focusing on this like a time series forecasting area a lot. So this is a chance if you have something particular requirements. For NLP, I think interfacing Azure, Google Cloud, or Amazon could be a quick way to add this. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, that type of things is something that probably like you can do it today by creating our custom script and then call it as custom R command or inside a mutate. So yeah, that's something that, super exciting area that, we should be able to do. So if you have something, please let me know. And then, speaking of Google service and so on, geocoding, like we have written some note by using Google Maps geocoding API, and then, like you can get all the address to be geocode, longitude, latitude, and then you can visualize and so on. So if you're interested in something like that, please feel free to contact me. Okay, any other questions? Okay. So we are planning for other sessions. So we try to do like every week, so around the same time. I think next one is I think I want to cover the Boruta, and also like we want to cover like more time series visualization side of things. And then there are a bunch of other things. So if you are interested in, if you have something you're interested in, please contact us and then or let me know what are the things you like me to present, and then we'll add that to the schedule. Okay. And then someone, just a crazy idea for after 6.0, adding reticulate for Python compatibility. Yes, absolutely. We are looking closely in this area of the development as well. So absolutely. Thank you for that suggestion. Okay, so I think that's it for today. And again, thank you so much for joining. And you don't have to wait for like next session, but if you have anything particular, please feel free to contact me, or just send a text chat message, and then we go from there. Okay, thanks guys.